The taste of a held line never leaves you. It is wet rockcrete and gun oil, and the chalk they put in the water to make it safe to drink. And under all of it, always, the sweet, thick rot of the men who held the bay before you and were not all carried out of it. You learn that taste in your first hour in the works. You keep it the rest of your life, however long the Departamento has decided that is going to be. You think a soldier is sent to a war to win it. I was not. I was sent to a war to spend a precise length of time losing it, and the precision is the part I need you to understand, because the precision is the whole horror, and it took me 60 days in the mud to see it, and the rest of my life to stop running the Sum. My name was Joran Sorn. On the strength return of the Ostrek 9th Line, I was an entry in a column, Trooper 312 of 8,000, and that column was the only part of me the Imperium ever troubled to keep accurate. I held a place called Strongpoint 16, we called it the Sump, for 71 days. It was rated to hold for 60. Those 11 extra days are the one thing I was ever commended for in writing, under a seal. And they are the thing I understand least, and the thing I have spent longest trying to forgive. This is what those 71 days were made of. This is the exact price of buying time with men, reckoned to the hour and filed nightly in a book. And this is how I learned what the order hold to the relief was really an instruction to do. They raised the 9th from a single founding world and shipped us out 8,000 strong. And the number 8,000 is the first thing you should take hold of, because it is the number that does not change. And almost everything I have to tell you lives in the gap between a number that does not change and the men it is supposed to count. I was a clerk's son from a tithe town, taken in the founding levy at 17, and I could read and cipher, which on a line is a rarer and more dangerous skill than marksmanship. A man who can shoot holds a bay. A man who can cipher gets handed the book. I did both in the end, and the book is the heavier of the two, and I have the worst dreams about it. We're line infantry, the Imperium's plainest and most numerous kind of soldier, the kind there is always more of, the kind costed cheap because the supply is, for all practical purpose, endless. They did not train us long. You do not need to train a man long to have him stand in a hole and not leave it. Most of what they trained into us was the not leaving. We learned the lasso rifle, the entrenching tool, the drill of stand to and stand down, the forms of the watch, and the catechism of the line, which has one article that matters, and the article is hold. The rest they trusted the mud to teach us, and the mud is a thorough instructor, and it does not repeat itself for the slow. We made planetfall on Dovrek in the 2nd year of the siege of it, and I will not pretend I understood the war I had been posted into, because no man on a line understands his war. He understands his bay, and the 2 bays beside it, and the stretch of wire to his front, and after that it is all rumor and chaplains. Dovrek was a forge world gone over to the enemy, a whole world of manufactories, and the millions who worked them turned to a heresy that was never once explained to me in any terms I could use. And the Imperium had come to take it back, the way the Imperium takes everything back, which is by feeding lines of men into it until the arithmetic comes right. I was one unit of the feeding. 8,000 of us, one regiment of 100 regiments, one front of a dozen fronts, and somewhere above all of it, the great number. The only one that mattered to the men who ran the Sum. The number of days the whole grinding business was permitted to take. Strongpoint 16 sat at the low point of the eastern works, where the trench lines crossed a drained marsh. And so it flooded always, in every season and against all the pumping, and the men who had held it before us had named it the Sump, and the name was the truest map of the place that existed. Let me give you its measurements, because the Imperium gave everything its measurements, and the measurements are how it thought. And to understand what was done to us, you have to learn to think the way the book thinks. The Sump was a works of some 400 meters of fire trench, 2 meters and a little more deep, fronted by 3 belts of wire and a kill ground of churned marsh perhaps 200 meters across before the enemy's own forward sap. It mounted, when we came up, 14 heavy weapons in prepared emplacements, and a nominal garrison of 1 battalion, a fifth of the 9th, 1,600 men, holding 400 meters, which is 1 man for every quarter meter of the Imperium's frontage on that stretch of Dovrek. And every one of those quarter meters had been costed, and I was the cost of one of them. A day in the Sump had a shape, and the shape never varied, and the not varying was the worst of it, worse than the shelling, because the shelling at least believed something was happening. Stand to in the dark before dawn, every man on the fire step facing the wire, because dawn is when the assault comes, if it is coming. Stand down at full light. Then the long day of the works, the bailing, always the bailing, the pumps and the buckets and the slow losing war against the water, the mending of the night's damage to the wire and the revetment, the carrying of the dead back to the rear sap, and the carrying of the ration up from it. 1 hot meal, brought up in drums that were never quite hot and never quite enough, and the rest of the day's eating was hardtack and the protein paste they issued in tubes, which tasted of nothing and sat in you like wet ash. The water came up in cans and tasted of the chalk and the can. Then stand to again at dusk, the second hinge of the day, and then the night, which belonged to the wire parties and the carrying parties and the guns, and then stand to before dawn, and the shape began again, identical. And each time it came round identical, it had quietly taken some of us away, so that the only thing that ever truly changed in the unchanging day was which faces were in it. I told you they handed me the book, and now I have to tell you what the book was, because the book is where I stopped being a man who was in the war and started being a man who kept its accounts. Every night, by lamplight in the company dugout, the strength return was filed. It was a single slate, ruled in columns, and it asked the same questions every night, and the questions were these: effectives, wounded, missing, dead, expended. Effectives was how many men could still stand a bay. Wounded was how many could not but might again. Missing was a mercy and a lie, because on a line a missing man is a dead man whose pieces were not found. But missing costs the regiment nothing, and dead costs it a replacement. And so the book preferred missing, and so did we. Dead was dead, and expended was the column for everything else the day had used: rounds, water, ration, wire. The power cells for the laser guns counted to the cell, because a cell was a thing the Munitorum had bought, and a man was a thing the Munitorum had merely raised. You will not understand the Imperium until you understand that it counted the power cells more carefully than the men, and that it was right to, by its own arithmetic, because the cells were harder to replace. I filed that slate every night for 71 nights, and I learned to read a day by its numbers the way I had once read my father's ledgers. A quiet day cost the Sump 20 men. A day of probing cost 40. A day of real assault cost whatever it cost, 200, 300, and was followed by a night of drafts coming up the communication trench to fill the gaps, so that the morning's effectives column read very nearly what it had read the morning before. That was the trick of it, the thing I was slow to see. The number held. Whatever the day did to us, the drafts came up in the dark, and the effectives column was dressed back to strength by dawn. And a man reading only the book, a man in a clean room far behind the line, reading only the nightly returns, would have seen a position that bled and was bandaged, holding its strength week on week, costing exactly as projected. He would not have seen that it was never the same blood. He would not have needed to. The book is not built to show it, and the man is not paid to look. The man who taught me the bay was named Ettrick, and I am going to give you Ettrick now, because he is the one thing in this account that the book has no column for, and so he is the one thing I have to hand to you myself. Ettrick had held the Sump for a year before I came up to it, which on that line made him older than old, a kind of ghost the new drafts looked at sidelong, because a man who had lasted a year had plainly been overlooked by something that was otherwise very thorough about not overlooking. And that is either luck or a debt, and on a line you do not ask which. He was not a large man, and he was not a brave one in the way the chaplains meant the word. He flinched at the shells like all of us, and he said so, which the brave ones never did. What Ettrick had was not courage. It was a kind of terrible patience, the patience of a man who has stopped expecting the day to be any different, and has decided to be good at it anyway. He kept account. Low on the rear wall of our firing bay, where the revetment met the duckboard and a crouching man could reach it, Ettrick kept a tally of the days, scratched into the rockcrete with the point of his bayonet. In the old field marks, 4 upright, and the 5th struck through. The way soldiers have counted the things they were afraid to count aloud since before the Imperium had a name. 1 mark a day, added at stand-down after the slate was filed, and before the night took over. When I came up, he had 300 and some marks on that wall. A year of them, a low gray ledger of his own kept in parallel to mine, and I asked him once what it was for. He said the thing I have carried, longest of everything he ever said. He said, so that someone counts us the right way round. The book counts what we cost. This counts what we spent. And then he scratched the day's mark, and we stood to. And every night when the mark was made, Ettrick said the same 4 words over it. The way a man says grace. The word stamped on every order that came up the line to us, printed in the catechism, painted on the board at the head of the communication trench where the drafts came up. Hold to the relief. That was the whole of our instruction and the whole of our hope and the whole of our faith, those 4 words. A relief was coming, a fresh regiment, a fresh division, some great wheeling movement we were the anchor of. It was never specified, and we did not need it specified, because the not specifying is exactly what let each man fill it with the relief he needed. We held to the relief. We held the Sump so that when the relief came, it would have a Sump to come to. Hold to the relief, Ettrick said, every night over the mark, and for a long time I thought it was a prayer. It was an instruction. I would learn the difference, and learning it cost me more than the 71 days did. The relief had a date at first. That is what faith needs, a date, and for the first month we had one. When we came up, the word in the trench was that the 9th was to be relieved on the 40th day, that we were the holding force for a relief in place, that a fresh regiment would come up the communication trench, and we would go down it, down to the rear, to the baths and the cots and the world behind the war that every line soldier believes in and almost none of them ever sees. Men counted to that 40th day. They counted it on their own walls, in their own marks, and the counting was happy counting then, a counting toward something. I counted it too. I will not pretend I was above it. I filed the strength returns, and I knew to the man how the Sump was bleeding. And still, some clerk's animal part of me believed in the 40th day, because the alternative was to believe in nothing. and a man in a hole needs the 40th day more than he needs the next meal. The 40th day came. No relief came with it. What came instead was an order, up the line, clean and short and formatted exactly like every other order, and it did not apologize and it did not explain, because the Imperium does not explain itself to a column in a ledger. It said the relief in place was rescheduled. It gave no new date. It said, in its last line, the line they always put, hold to the relief. And the date that had been the shape of all our hope was simply gone, dissolved back into those 4 open words. And the words that had been a promise with a number in them were now a promise with the number quietly removed. And most of the men did not even notice the number was gone, because the words were the same words. That is the most frightening thing I know about the Imperium, that it can take the number out of your hope and leave the words standing, and you will go on saying them. It was around then that the enemy began to talk to us. They had loud hailers in their forward sap, and on the quiet nights, when the wind came off the marsh toward us, they would broadcast, not battle noise, not threats, but a voice, a calm and reasonable human voice, because the enemy on Dovrek had been men once, and many of them had been guardsmen once, and they knew exactly what to say to men in a hole. The voice told us things. It told us that no relief was coming. It told us that we had been written off, that the returns we filed were read by no one who meant to act on them, that we were a holding cost in a calculation we would never be shown, kept in the line, to die slowly, so that something elsewhere could happen quietly. It said all of this in a tone of great gentleness, the way you tell a man a hard truth for his own good, and it ended every broadcast by inviting us simply to walk out, across the wire, into a heresy that would at least not lie to us about what we were worth. And here's the thing I've never been able to set down. The voice was right. About the facts, the voice was entirely right. There was no relief coming, and we had been written off, and we were a holding cost. And every word the gentle, reasonable trader voice said about our situation was true to the decimal. It was the only voice in that whole war that ever told us the truth about our situation. And it was the voice of the enemy, and the truth it told was bait. And the Imperium's answer to it was not a counter-argument, because the Imperium does not argue, but the same 4 words, posted fresh each morning on the board at the head of the trench. Hold to the relief. A lie, against the enemy's truth. And we held to the lie, and we were right to. And I still believe we were right to. And I have never been able to make the rightness of it feel like anything but the worst thing that was ever done to me. The drafts came up at night, always at night, because the communication trench was sighted by the enemy's guns in daylight. And a draft moving up in daylight was only a way of spending the replacements before they reached the bay that needed them. They came up green, and they came up wrong-footed in the dark, 20 or 40 or 100 of them depending on what the day had taken, and a corporal would meet them at the junction and parcel them out along the bays to fill the gaps the book had recorded that morning. They were younger than we had been. Then they were younger than that. Toward the end, they were sending up men who had been founded and shipped and landed and pushed up the communication trench so fast that they reached the fire step not knowing how to set the safety on the last rifle they had been handed, somewhere in the dark behind them. And I taught more than one boy to do it, crouched in the bay with the dawn stand already going gray in the east, which is to say I taught him the one thing he had time to learn before he might need it. I stopped learning their names. I want to be honest about that, because it is the kind of thing testimony exists to be honest about. In my first weeks, I had learned every name in the bay, the way you do, and then those men had gone into the missing and dead columns one after another, and I had filed each name and felt each one, and a man only has so much of that in him. It is a finite store, like the power cells, and mine ran out. So I stopped. When a new draft came up, I did not ask his name. I showed him the safety and the fire step and where to crouch when the shelling started, and I called him Trooper. And if he lasted a week, I might learn his name, and if he did not, I had saved myself the cost of it. The book had taught me to think. A name was an expenditure I could no longer afford. In the strength return I filed each night when on reading, in the effectives column, a number very near 8,000, dressed back up by the night's drafts, the great unchanging number, and I wrote it in a clean hand. Every man that number counted was a stranger I had refused to know. The regiment that bore the number was a thing that had died and been replaced so many times over that nothing remained of the 8,000 who had shipped from the founding world but the number itself, and me, still keeping it. The enemy made his great effort against the Sump on the 51st day, and I am not going to describe the assault to you, because the assault is not the point and never was, and because the men who want the assault described are always men who have decided that the war was the fighting, when the war was the arithmetic, and the fighting was only how the arithmetic was paid. We'll give you the numbers instead, because the numbers are the truth, and I was the man who wrote them. In the 4 days of the great effort, the Sump expended, that is the book's word, expended, something over 900 men. Against a garrison the book still insisted was 1,600 strong, which means that in 4 days the position lost more than half of every man in it and was, every night, dressed back to strength by drafts coming up the dark, so that each dawn it stood again at its full nominal 1,600, and each dusk it had spent another 200 or 300, and the effectives column held its line across the page like a wall, while behind the wall the men poured through and were gone. I filed those 4 returns. I wrote expended 900 and some in a clean hand, and I added Ettrick's marks to the wall for those 4 days. 4 marks, 1 a day, the same 4 small marks for the worst 4 days of my life, because the wall counted days and not men, and a day is a day however many men it eats. And I understood, scratching the 54th mark with Ettrick's bayonet while the bay around me was full of faces I had refused to learn, that the 2 counts had finally come apart entirely. The book's count and Ettrick's count. What we cost and what we spent, and neither of them counted me. That was the thing I saw on the 54th night with the bayonet in my hand. There was no count anywhere, in any book or on any wall, that had a column for the man doing the counting. I was keeping 2 ledgers of the dead, and I was in neither of them. And when I went at last into the missing column, some other clerk's son would write me there in a clean hand and add a mark to a wall for the day I died, and the day would go on being a day, and the number would go on being the number, and not one stroke anywhere would mean me. Ettrick was killed on the 60th day, which was the day the Sump had been rated to hold, and I have never decided whether the timing was the cruelest thing the war did to me or the only honest thing it ever said. He was not killed in the assault. That would have been a kind of sense, and the line does not deal in that kind of sense. He was killed in the quiet after it, on the 60th morning, by a single shell out of a clear gray dawn, one of the random, harassing rounds the enemy sent over to remind us that quiet was a thing he permitted, and not a thing we had earned. It fell in the next bay but one, and Ettrick had gone along to that bay to show a new draft how to clear a jammed laser gun, because he was the kind of man who did that. And the new draft lived and Ettrick did not, and I did not even see it happen. A runner told me. I was filing the morning return when the runner told me, and I had the slate in my hand. And I want you to know that my first clear thought on being told that Ettrick was dead, was the column. Which column? Missing or dead? whether they had found enough of him. That is what the book had made of me by the 60th day. The best man I knew was dead, and my mind went to the ledger before it went to my own heart. And when the grief came, and it came late and from very far down, like a sound from the bottom of the marsh. I went to the bay that night, our bay after the slate was filed, and I took up Ettric's bayonet from where they had left his kit, and I added the day's mark to the wall. The 60th mark, more or less. I had stopped being certain of the total, the way Ettric never was, and there was no one now to be certain for me. And I said the words, because someone had to say them, and there was no one left in the bay who had been there when they meant a date. Hold to the relief. I said it over the mark, in Ettric's place with Ettric's bayonet, and I did not believe it. I had not believed it since the 40th day, and I said it anyway, and that was the night I understood that the words had never needed to be believed. They only needed to be said. That is all the Imperium had ever asked of the faith it issued us. Not belief. Repetition. Hold to the relief, said over the mark every night, by whoever was left to hold the bayonet. I learned what the Sump was for on the 64th day, and I learned it by accident. The way you learn the few true things the Imperium ever let slip. And I have wished every day since that I had not, and I would not give it back, because it is the only thing I was ever told that was true, even though no one meant to tell me. A staff officer's runner came up the line that day, lost, separated from his party, a clean young man from the rear who had never been forward and was the color of the chalk by the time he reached us. While we waited for the shelling to lift so we could send him back, I gave him water, and he talked, the way the rear talks when it is frightened and forward and wants to seem important. He told me, to comfort himself more than me, that we were nearly done, that it was nearly over, that the Eastern works had done magnificently. I asked him, done how? Relieved? And he looked at me and something went across his face and he told me, because he did not know it was a secret, because at his level it was not a secret, it was just the plan. There was no relief. There had never been a relief scheduled for the Eastern works. The Sump and the strongpoints either side of it, and the men in them, all of us were a holding action. Our entire purpose, costed and scheduled from before we made planetfall, was to hold the enemy's attention and his strength on the eastern face of Dovrek for a set number of days, while the real movement, the war's actual intent, went in 70 kilometers to the west, where they were not expecting it, because we were so loudly and so expensively dying in the east to make sure they kept looking our way. We were the feint. We were 8,000 men and 100 strong points spent as a glance in the wrong direction, and the relief that every man in the Sump had counted toward, had filled with baths and cots and home, had held the line for, had died still saying the words for. The relief was not delayed and was not cancelled, and had never in any book at any level existed at all. It was issued to us. The runner said it almost with admiration. The promise of relief, he said, repeating something he had plainly heard a superior say, is the most efficient ordnance in a holding action. It costs nothing, and it is never expended. He did not know he was quoting my whole life back to me. I sent him down the line with an escort, and I never learned whether he lived, and I have not to this day decided whether I hope he did. And the worst of it, the very worst, is the same worst that sits under everything I have told you. It was not a mistake. It was not even cruelty. It was a good plan. The feint on the eastern works held the enemy's strength exactly where it was needed for exactly as long as it was needed. And the movement in the west went in. And Dovrek was taken back for the Emperor at a cost that some man in a clean room, running the sum, found acceptable and even economical. We were a line in that sum, the Eastern works holding cost, and the line balanced. The arithmetic was correct. I have run it 10,000 times in the years since, looking for the place where it comes out wrong, where our 71 days were a waste or an error or a crime that someone could be made to answer for, and it never comes out wrong. We bought what we were spent to buy. The promise that killed us was the cheapest and most effective weapon on that whole front, and it was pointed at us by our own side, and it worked exactly as designed. And it is still, I am told, in the manuals. Hold to the relief, the most efficient ordnance in a holding action. It costs nothing, and it is never expended. Except us. We were what it expended. We were the nothing it cost. We held 11 days past the rating. And I have to tell you about the 11 days because the 11 days are the part that should have broken the arithmetic and did not, and are the part I was commended for, and are the part I understand least of all. By the 60th day, the day Ettrick died, the day the rating said the Sump would fall, the drafts had stopped coming up. They simply stopped. I did not know then that it was because the Western movement had already gone in on schedule, and the Eastern works were no longer worth the cost of reinforcing, that we had served our purpose by the 60th day, and everything after it was the Imperium, declining to spend one more draft on a feint that had already paid. The draft stopped, and the dying did not, and so for the first time in 70 days the great number began to move. The effectives column, which had held its line across the page like a wall, began to fall, because there was no longer anything coming up the dark to dress it back, and I kept filing it. That was still my duty, and I still did it. But here the duty turned, because a true return now would have told the rear that the Sump was finished. 200 men where the book said 1,600, and a finished position is one the enemy is welcome to walk into. So the order came, up the line clean, formatted like all the others, that the Eastern works were to maintain reported strength. Maintain reported strength. I was to go on, filing 8,000 for the regiment and 1,600 for the Sump, in a clean hand, over a trench that held, by the 65th day, perhaps 300 living men, because a position reported at full strength keeps the enemy cautious, keeps him massing for an assault against a garrison that is no longer there, keeps his attention, and his attention was the only thing we had ever been for. So I wrote the number, knowing. I sat in the dugout each night with the true count in my head and the false count in my hand, and I wrote the false one, 1,600, 1,600, 1,600, over a bay full of strangers and dead men and boys who could not yet set a safety, and I sealed it and sent it down. It was the last and worst thing the book made of me, that at the very end I was not even counting the dead any longer. I was hiding them. The whole purpose of me, in those 11 surplus days, was to make sure that no number anywhere told the truth about how few of us were left to hold, to a relief that had never existed. And we held. That is the obscenity of it. 300 men, then 200, holding 400 meters rated for 1,600, against an enemy kept cautious by a number I was falsifying nightly, and we held 11 days past our rating. And somewhere a clerk noted the overperformance of the Eastern works with satisfaction. That satisfaction became, in time, a commendation under a seal, sent to the founding world to be read out to whoever was left, who had known the men of the 9th. A commendation for holding 11 days beyond projection, which is to say a commendation for the efficiency with which we had concealed our own deaths in order to die a little longer for a glance in the wrong direction. I have the commendation. I keep it in the drawer, where I keep nothing else. It is the most honest thing the Imperium ever gave me, because it is an award for arithmetic, and arithmetic is the only thing that was ever really happening. The Sump fell on the 71st day, and I did not die there, which I have come to understand is the single fact that disqualifies my testimony from being the testimony it should be, because the men who could tell you the true end of the Sump are the ones who got the true end, and I got the other one. When the end came, it came fast, after 70 days of coming slow, the way these things do. On the 71st morning, the enemy stopped being cautious. Whether he had finally seen through the number I had been falsifying, or whether he had simply been ordered at last to clear the eastern works now that they mattered to no one on either side, I do not know, and the book does not say. He came in strength against a garrison that existed mostly on my slates, and there was very little to stop him. And the Sump was overrun in something under an hour after 71 days, which is its own small, bitter arithmetic. I was in the company dugout with the book when the bay went. A section of the revetment came down, the rear wall of our firing bay, the wall with the count on it, Ettrick's count and then my count, 400 and some marks of days that men had spent. It came down into the mud under a shell and was gone. The whole tally, every stroke, pressed back into the Sump that had been named for exactly this. That was the funeral the count got. It was the same funeral the men it counted got, which is to say, none, which is to say the marsh. I lived because a piece of that same wall knocked me down and buried me to the chest, and the men who came over the position in the next hour took me for one of the dead they were walking on, and I very nearly was. When our own people retook the ground a day later, they retook it easily. It cost almost nothing. The enemy had only wanted it cleared and not held. They dug 3 of us alive out of the wreck of the eastern works. 3. Out of the 8,000 of the 9th and all the drafts that had been poured in after them. 3 living men, and I was one, and I have never once been able to feel it as luck. They sent me to the rear at last. I went down the communication trench I had held for 71 days waiting to go down it, and there were no baths and no cots and no home at the bottom of it. There was a casualty station and a clerk. The clerk asked me my regiment, and I said the Austrek 9th, and he checked a list and he told me, not unkindly, that there was no Austrek 9th. It had been struck. A regiment reduced below viability is struck from the rolls, and its number retired or reissued, and the survivors are reposted as individual drafts to whatever line needs filling. And so the 3 of us who came out of the Sump were entered, each alone, into the great column of the available, to be sent up some other communication trench to some other Sump under some other number. And the 9th, the great unchanging number I had kept true on paper through 71 nights while every man it counted was replaced and replaced and replaced. The 9th was gone in an afternoon with a stroke of a clerk's pen, the moment it was no longer useful to pretend it was 8,000 strong. He struck it out. I watched him do it. 1 line through the number. I had drawn that exact line myself in another life, through other things. It takes about a second. It is the lightest thing a hand can do, and it is the whole of what we are given at the end. All of us. The line through the number, and then the page turns. I served 11 more years after the Sump, on other lines, under other numbers, and I never kept account again, and I never again learned a name I did not have to, and I was, they tell me, a good soldier, by which they meant a soldier who had stopped expecting the day to be any different, and had decided to be good at it anyway, which is the thing Ettrick was, and I had become it, and becoming it is not a thing that happens to you. It is a thing that is spent out of you, mark by mark. until what is left is patient. They mustered a new Ostrich ninth in time. They do. The number was too good to retire. A founding world that had given 8,000 once could be made to give 8,000 again, and the new men would carry the old number and the battle honors of the eastern works of Dovrek, the magnificent holding action, the 11 days beyond projection. And not one of them would know that the honor they wore was an award for arithmetic, for the efficiency of a feint, for how well 8,000 men had played the part of a glance in the wrong direction. They would be told they were the 9th that held the Sump. They would be proud. And somewhere in their training, painted on a board at the head of some trench, stamped on their orders, said over them by a chaplain who believed it, would be the 4 words: the most efficient ordnance in a holding action, the words that cost nothing and are never expended, issued fresh to a new 8,000. Hold to the relief. There was never any relief. I want to say that once more, plainly, because it is the one fact I was given, and I have nothing to do with it but pass it on. The relief was not late. It was not lost. It was not betrayed by some failure an honest inquiry could find and name. It was ordnance. It was a weapon the Imperium fired at its own men, because frightened men in a hole hold longer if you give them a date to hold to. And it does not matter that the date is a lie. It works better than truth. It is cheaper than reinforcement and more reliable than courage. And it is still in the manuals, and it will be fired at the new 9th, and they will hold to it, and they will spend themselves against the rating and past it. And a clerk's son among them will keep 2 counts that do not include him and file a number that stops being true. And the marsh will take the wall, and the line will go through the number, and the page will turn. It is not a mistake. It adds up. That is the whole of what I learned in the 71 days, and it is the whole of what there is to learn. And I still say the words. That is the last thing and the worst, and I will give it to you, and then I am done. After everything, after the runner and the truth and the 11 days and the line through the number, I still say them every night, the way Ettrick said them, the way a man says a thing he has stopped believing and cannot stop saying. Not because I think a relief is coming. I know better than any man alive what the relief was. I say them because they were the last words said over good men by whoever was left to hold the bayonet, and someone should go on saying them the right way round. Over the marks, even with the marks gone into the marsh, even with no one left to hear. Which way round they are said. Hold to the relief. I held. There was no relief. Both of those are true, and the arithmetic balances, and I am the remainder, the part the sum leaves behind because it would not divide. That was the whole of my service. It balanced. It was enough, and it was nothing, and both of those have always been true.